the beacon for the nation. This program is suitable for general viewing.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Exactly 21 minutes past 8 o'clock on the 9th day of March 2023. My name is Faisal, Kassim, and welcome to the Live Real Talk. At least 6 million people are in dire need of starvation and dire need of assistance at this time as we speak. At a time where Kenya is facing at least the 6th dry season. Of course, depressed rainfall at the very most. Right now as we speak, the pastoralists in the northern part of Kenya, the arid and the semi-arid region of this country, they have lost livestock worth millions of shillings. Hundreds of thousands of students have dropped out of school, moving around in search for food and livelihoods. The president, on the 25th of September 2022, directed this deputy, Dr. Rigathi Gachagua, to come up with a task force that would look into addressing the matter. The drought that so far has been described by many as the worst drought was to have hit the country in the past 40 years. Of course, the Deputy President moved with speed to form that task force that would be under the patronage of the man in the house on the hill, that is Dr. William Samoei Ruto. Tonight, we are honored to be joined by the Secretary General of the Kenya Red Cross and a critical member of the task force, that is none other than Dr. Asha Mohammed. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much, Doctor, for making time for us this evening.
Shukran for inviting me as well.
Yes, Doctor, I mean, you were an experienced humanitarian. Many have described this drought as the worst drought to have hit this country. Being an experienced humanitarian on critical decision-making position, you've seen a lot from calamities, disasters. What is your take? How would you describe this drought that is currently affecting the country and the larger North Horn of Africa?
Thank you very much. As you've said, yes, it has been described as the worst drought in 40 years. And there are many reasons, because I know a lot of times people say, well, but we also had drought in 2011, which was also very bad. But talking about 5 already past failed seasons and a 6th one that we are in at the moment, this is something that is unprecedented. We have not seen anything like this before. For the last 3 years, we have parts of this country that have not received any rainfall. That is also unprecedented. But to also couple that is that these communities have not only suffered drought, but they have suffered many other disasters, one after the other. So we can start from, let's say, 2019, when we had floods. We had desert locust invasion in actually some of the worst hit counties. We had COVID-19 in 2020. And by the end of 2020 already, we had the failed rains, reaching again almost another 2-3 seasons. So you can see that it has left communities in some very serious situation because they have not had any time in between to recover. And I think that's what makes it very bad, because in the past, yes, we would have drought, we say maybe another 10 years before the next one. People are able to recover, or maybe 3 years, but now we have not had any break at all for the last 3 years.
Dr. As you said, we have had similar situations before in 2011 and the previous years as well. We've had such situations. But again, this time is when you've seen the government coming out full force to an extent of putting together a task force that would look into addressing this matter. A task force that it's not as government officials populated as anyone would assume, but rather look at experienced humanitarians like yourself and people from the private sector. How has this move helped to address the drought situation in the country?
I think one of the issues, of course, is really to try and bring as many people on board in terms of, supporting this response, bringing people with different expertise, because even on this committee, we have a large part of it is actually, people from private sector, but also, people with different backgrounds. We have, banks represented, we have the telecoms represented, but we have also philanthropists represented. We have example of Kenya Red Cross as a humanitarian organization also represented. We also have government, for example, the National Drought Management Authority, which is really the authority that is able then to tell us, which are some of the areas that need support. So I think that was, a very good move in trying to mobilize other support, especially from private sector, but also to say that this committee also works in tandem with other structures, especially in the office of the Deputy President, where you have a technical committee, which then has the different line ministries, and also you have the UN agencies and other organizations. So I think it's yes, the first time that we are having, coordination at the highest level that is involving all the different players.
But at the same time, every time you come out and address the media, the numbers as you report as the task force keeps on increasing. I mean, the latest presser that you guys gave at the KICC, the number stand at 6 million. Before that, you were at 5.3 million. Before that, you were at 4.5 million. So if anything, the numbers are on an ascending trajectory. Yet we have the committee that we trust in. We have the government that appears, or rather gives an impression that they are in control of the situation. Where's the misfit? Where is the mishaps in all this then? Why aren't we looking at the impact, so to speak?
No, I think we have to understand what are the drivers of the drought. One thing we have to accept is that climate change is here with us, which means that even as we continue to respond, the situation is still being challenged because there is no rain. So which means today even some of the boreholes that may have been drilled are also going to run dry because there's no more rain coming. I remember yesterday morning coming from home and going to work, and there's the part of the Athi River under the bridge where the SGR passes. This is a place every morning I would see, people going to fetch water and water the flowers and plants, where they're selling. But more importantly, you'd see people actually washing their clothes there. But yesterday morning it struck me that there was nobody because there was no water at all. It's all completely dry, and we've been told that in the next 1 to 2 months, if we don't get rains, then a lot of the open sources will be dry. So you can imagine a scenario where, yes, you're mobilizing, you're trying your best to distribute food, you're trying your best to rehabilitate boreholes, but at the same time, you're not getting rain to recharge these boreholes. So this is the challenge that we find. In terms of numbers of people, yes, falling into this bracket is also because some of the other counties that are not originally in this group are also falling in.
Drought-prone areas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So today we are talking about 32 counties, and some of the counties are not in the arid and semi-arid areas. So I think this is really, the big challenge. And don't forget, again, it's not just about the drought, but with the drought, there's the whole economics around it. Yes, as a committee, we have, continued to mobilize resources, but we are also not where we want to be. So one of the issues for us, of course, is to continue to ask every Kenyan, every private sector organization, every other civil society organization to all come together and try to support to ensure that, we reach as many people as we can.
As the head of the Secretariat of the Kenya Red Cross, I mean, being the Secretary General of the Kenya Red Cross, and of course, by extension, being a member of the task force, what right now within saving lives spectrum is your immediate area of focus for as far as addressing the drought is concerned?
So the immediate one is actually food. And as you said, yes, 6 million people need assistance, but we have, according to the NDMA as well, 4.4 million that need urgent assistance. So people need food, food in kind, but also the question of cash, because there are some areas, especially where there are markets, and we actually recommend that people should be given cash instead of food in kind. And why am I saying this is because food in kind is a very expensive affair. A lot of resources are required. Because also it requires, a very heavy logistics component, which takes a lot of that resource. But cash transfer is easier, is faster. has less issues in terms of, logistics costs, and it also gives people dignity, because the kind of, distributions that happen. Today I just came from Kajiado this afternoon, where we were also doing some food distribution on behalf of the steering committee.
Yeah.
And it's good, yes, you feel some gratitude that you are able to give somebody some food, but it really feels bad to see people lining up to get food. So
basically,
that dignity, the human,
dignity
exactly, human dignity is lost, and I think that's something we really need to save our people from. The other intervention is water. Water is critical, both for the immediate, but also for the long term. Especially, of course, we are giving food, but they need water to cook the food. They also need water for other, for drinking, for other hygiene issues. And now we are seeing even cholera is becoming a problem in some of these counties, because there's not enough water and there's not enough clean water. And this is, again, another risk that is going to be an impact, an aftermath of actually what we are going through. So water is critical. There's been a lot of water tracking done, especially by the government and county governments. But for us, it's also about rehabilitation of the already existing water facilities. And the steering committee working with KDF, we've already signed an MOU with KDF to support in rehabilitation of about 360 boreholes across the 32 counties. I must also say thank you to Jamia Mosque, because you've also supported us in terms of rehabilitation of some of the shallow wells. So that is critical. There's another component that people don't talk about a lot, but that is something as Kenya Red Cross we are really focusing on, and this is health outreaches, because there are also health impacts out of this drought. We have children that are malnourished, almost 1 million. We have women, who are pregnant or are lactating, are also in some dire situation, and it is important to ensure that they also get the, health services that they require. So outreaches to a lot of these places is also important. I'm
interested to know, how sustainable is this food distribution and even the cash transfer? You're talking about 6 million people who are in dire need, and of course, as you mentioned, according to NDMA, a further out of that, 4.5 million people are in urgent need of the food assistance. Just right now, we looked at earlier on in Wajir, you distributed at least foodstuff to at least 575 families. So the question is, how frequent do you distribute this food? Yes, you're giving them food now. For how long will it, is it supposed to take them? And then after that, are you going to come back to them again? Or how exactly does it work?
It is a big challenge, to be very honest, because we do not have the kind of resources that would require us to sustain this food distribution. And that is why it's a very difficult act to do, because when you give food, you probably, maybe the most you'll give is food for up to a month. But after that, then of course these families need food. But remember, we are not the only actors. And I think this is where then the coordination is very critical, and that is being done by the county steering group. So in every county there is a committee which is chaired by the governor and the county commissioner that is supposed to ensure that all the places that are affected are reached. And so any partner who comes in and wants to give some assistance, they're supposed to go through the steering committee so that then they can be directed accordingly. And that is also a way of trying to ensure that we reach all the people that need to be reached, but also that we are not duplicating, so that if somebody else has come and has already given food for 2 weeks in this area, then maybe somebody, the other partner should go to another area, or maybe then you come back later. But it is not sustainable, as you have asked, because yes, for sure, I think the estimate we have is if we were to continue to give food even to everyone within a month, we need probably 15 billion shillings in just 1 month. Wow. This is a huge, huge undertaking, and that is why it's important. Even as we do this immediate response, we have to start thinking about what is the more longer term solution, because this is not sustainable at all.
Thanks so much, Dr. And that's how we wrap up our first segment of the show. When we come back, we want to know, many governors have been inaugurated as patrons of the Kenya Red Cross County branches, and these governors are actually receiving funds for developments in their respective counties. Similarly, members of parliament are also receiving funds for the NGCDF. I mean, some of these monies that are being distributed to them are meant for education, empowerment, and many other development agenda. But again, how do you develop an area where people are in dire need of survival, at least to survive and see the next day? How does the steering committee coordinate with some of these county chiefs and constituency chiefs to address the drought situation in their respective constituencies and counties? This and much more after the break.
HorizonTV, the beacon for the nation.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I want to appeal to all our citizens in every part of our country to come to the aid of the many Kenyans living in the over 23 counties that are facing severe drought and humanitarian crisis, that don't have food on their table, that their livestock livelihood is in danger, that water is not available. We want to ask each and everybody, including the private sector, to contribute whatever, however small it is, in order to save those millions of Kenyans who need us at this particular hour of need. Counties are facing severe drought. The national government is doing its part, but I want to appeal to all wishes and all citizens of our country in the private sector in various capacity to come to the aid of the many millions of Kenyans who don't have food on their table. I want to urge everybody in our country to contribute whatever, however little it is, to save the lives of our people.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. My name is Honorable Nasra Nanda. I am a member of County Assembly in Nairobi. I'm here to tell you today that Kenyans are suffering, and they are suffering because there's a drought that is affecting so many families, affected and caused by a climate crisis that they have no hand in. For this reason, many families are displaced. Many children are dying. Parents are helpless as they watch their children starve. The elderly are being left behind. This is a humanitarian crisis, and it commands us as Muslims, as human beings, to step up to help our brothers and sisters. Because as it stands, 3.1 million people are displaced, are helpless, and are struggling. They need you, they need me, they need all of us to step up and help them. Please, I implore you to kindly donate and help our brothers and sisters, because every positive change in the world starts with you and me. Shukran.
HorizonTV, the beacon for the nation.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for keeping it live, Real Talk, and welcome back. Now, Isiolo Governor Goyo, recently came out and announced that he suspended all development projects within his county to address the drought issue. Urban, let's listen in.
As a county government, we will suspend all projects because our priority now is to safeguard the lives of our people and their animals, because that's our priority. You cannot do development when people are dying. We are suspending all development projects to focus on making sure that nobody in Isiolo County dies of hunger. That's our priority.
Thanks so much. That was Governor Guyo, Isiolo County. And of course, I mean, this is a very good example that I feel should be emulated. I have seen you have been meeting several elected leaders. Is this part of the agenda maybe, or a proposal they're putting to them? That is one. Secondly, the pastoralist parliamentary group is one of the largest caucuses in Kenyan parliament right now with over 100 members. I mean, and NGCDF funds is always earmarked for particular things. Have you tried to interact with them and see what you could do at the policy level to see how you can address some of these issues right now that are affecting Kenyans? Yeah.
No, thank you. And yes, it's true that this is something that I think is very positive and should be commended, that, you know, as a governor, you know, he decided that he'll put aside all other development projects to focus on the lives of the people and their livestock. And I must say that, yes, we have seen quite a number of governors also trying to prioritize, maybe all not to the same extent, but clearly I think we all recognize that there will be no development without people. And so at the end of the day, it's also about how we ensure that, you know, these people get support today so that they can be part of that development for the future. So a lot is being done, and I must say that I think we have seen in the last few months how, together with the county governments and the other stakeholders, that there is a lot more coordination and there is a lot more, not just coordination, but it's about pulling together. That, you know, you find, I know, like, for example, in Garissa, you know, one time we also had Governor Nadif there also saying, I have so much, so how much can you also bring, and how much can somebody else bring? And when we put all that together, then we're actually able to, you know, to give some good assistance. And I think that is the way to go, because we know that resources are also not enough, but we need to prioritize because we don't want to lose any life. At the same time, can we pull together? Because sometimes when you take too little also, it may not necessarily create that impact. So if we pull together, then we can be able to reach more people, but reach them also for longer, so that the issue we were discussing earlier then also doesn't arise. In terms of policy, I think the counties have also a good leeway in terms of working with their county assemblies to be able actually to look at their budgets and be able to actually allocate. Yeah. And I think that is really something that I think should continue, because at the end of the day, we need to keep our people alive for other, you know, interventions to happen in the future. So I think there is a good concerted effort, but the question now is, what can we really do more as Kenyans ourselves? Because what we are hearing from many of our partners is that they cannot sustain the same level of support they've been giving us. And I think this is very clear. Of course, one of the things going against us is the fact that Kenya, you know, has been put at the level of, you know, so-called low middle income country. And many partners then feel that, or donors feel that Kenya should be able to take care of itself, and so they would concentrate on Somalia, concentrate on Ethiopia. But at the same time, it's also about the other disasters that are happening in other parts of the world. So we started with Ukraine, we've had Turkey, we've had Pakistan, we have had Afghanistan and, you know, Mozambique and others. So these are always distractions that come through that then the question of the drought response is not very urgent. But what we are also doing now from the Kenya Red Cross perspective is that as the Red Crescent movement, we're also working very close with the African Union and the governments of the countries in the Horn of Africa to try to come together now and look at the resilient programs, so that as we are responding for the immediate, but we need to start looking at how do we put in place measures that will ensure that these communities become more resilient for the future.
And thank you so much for preempting that, because 3 weeks back, Jamil Mosque was in Marsabit County doing food distribution, and this is one of the beneficiaries, and they are really considering a lifestyle change from the normal pastoralist to possibly starting farming. Aban, do you have that clip?
Hii kiangazi ikisha, tunataka kujaribu farming kwa sababu hii mambo ya kuwa na mali kila saa, kiangazi ikija inakwisha, kiangazi ikija inakwisha, na watu wanabaki bila kitu. Tungetaka kubadilisha mkendo kidogo ili watu waanze kulima, na kama ni lima lazima tuwe na bore kidogo, tuwe na maji ya kufanya irrigation ili watu wapate chakula. Na ya pili, kuna haja ya kufanya restocking kwa sababu wanyama yote imekwisha. Ile jambo ambayo tungeliomba wadhamini wetu wafikirie sana ni ku restock our community.
Hapa tumekaa miaka mingi, na hii katika miaka mingi, mara hii ile ukame ambayo imetutokea imekuwa mingi ya kupita kiasi. Saa hizi mali imeisha, lakini tunahofia hata maisha ya watu.
Hawa walikuwa zamani wakiishi wakitegemea mfugo, ngamia, ngombe na mbuzi sana sana. Lakini kwa saizi hali yao, mbuzi imekufa na hata ngamia iko hali ya kukufa, na hali yao saizi si hali mzuri.
Thanks so much, Aban. Daktari, as you are addressing some of these issues, what are the challenges that you are facing, one, as an institution, two, as the whole steering committee? We've seen some of the areas that are hardly hit by the drought are still experiencing high levels of insecurity. Of course, courtesy of the bandit stock of Turkana, Baringo, West Pokot, Marakwet, and some of those areas. I mean, how much of a challenge do they pose, these insecurity issues, and how are you going around it?
No, for sure, insecurity is a challenge, and unfortunately it is, of course, an issue in the same counties where actually people need assistance the most. So this is something we are also very concerned about, and I would say luckily for us also as a committee, because we work with the government, and we have the Minister of Interior who has also been part of the coordination mechanism of the drought response, and working then to ensure that there is security enough to allow this response to continue in those areas. So we work very closely then with the agencies that are concerned, because we must be able to have access. As the Kenya Red Cross also, because we have been in these counties for a long time, actually we work more in those hard-to-reach counties. We also have, I would say, relationships with even the local leaders to ensure that those that need assistance also get it, but we also liaise as well with government and also the other agencies that are involved to say that we need a safe access to be able to reach people, because you know that in this situation it means that the most vulnerable, who are women and children, will be the ones that will be hardest hit, and we must ensure that those ones continue to be supported. But the other point also to raise is to say that the drought in itself is an insecurity issue, and that is why it is even so critical to ensure that we respond to this drought in the way we should, because we have seen there have been conflicts in the last year or so because of the drought over resources. The limited resources that are there, the water especially, pasture, where communities will come together and will start to fight over that. And not only people, I have seen for myself, even the livestock themselves, trying to fight to be able to get to the water pan or to the water trough to be able to get the water. So you begin to see that this conflict is not just for people, but it's also even for the livestock. And then we have the other scenario where we are also having wildlife-human conflict, because we have wildlife as well who are very much being affected, and we are losing a lot of our wildlife, and they are moving and encroaching into places where, you know, human beings are living, and that is also bringing another problem. So I think there's the insecurity causing this problem as well, but the drought in itself is also a security issue that needs to also be looked at.
On its own, but still, every time the drought subject is being brought to people's ear, it's like people have lost interest. The general masses, they're not taking active roles in it the way we saw in the previous years. For example, 2011, we saw Kenyans coming out. The previous years, we saw a number of initiatives coming up to try and address this matter. But this time, it has been very different. Like, from your own analysis, why would this be the case? What would be the driving force to cause this?
I think several factors. One, let me start by the time it has taken for this drought. We are talking about 3 years. We are talking about almost 6 failed rainy seasons. It's a very long time. And as human beings, of course, we tend to tire. After some time, people are like, you know, it's been 1 year, it's been 2 years, it's been 3 years, and it is still going on. So, of course, there's a bit of that, shall I say, fatigue, that it's not ending. And that is why it's so important to continue to keep this message that we cannot afford to tire. We cannot afford to lay back, because it means that, you know, we will lose people because of that. Secondly, it's a question of the fact that Kenyans today are themselves going through many challenges. So if I donate today, I may not sustain that, because I also have issues that I'm dealing with. I have also high food prices that I have to deal with, because even the food that I'm buying, I need more money. Today, as an organization, I was saying for the Kenya Red Cross, the amount of resource we would use to buy food, we are actually getting 50% of the ration that we would have done, you know, a few years back, because of the high cost of food. So Kenyans themselves, we appreciate that they have tried their best to give what they can, but we also know that they are challenged because of the situation they find themselves. Thirdly, I think it's also the question of, and this is very personal to me, that we've made this drought about food. And when we talk about just food, and they see there's all kinds of food distribution happening in the country, then I think people tend to relax. And they feel that, okay, people are being taken care of. And for me, my advocacy is really on trying to say this drought is not just about food. And I think we've heard it from some of the, you know, local leaders or some of the community members saying it's about people's livelihoods. So food is one issue. Yes, you can give people food, but you will not have solved the problem. The biggest issue is about their livelihoods. And I think that is where we need to start making that plea a little bit louder and a little bit stronger, to say, yes, food is important and we need to give food because we have to save lives. But we are going to be left with communities that cannot even help themselves after this. And we cannot continue to give them food. So what can we do to ensure that we save them today, but we have to start looking at how to ensure that their livelihoods continue. We heard about restocking. Of course, that is important, but we hope the conditions will allow, because you cannot restock if you have no, you know, there's no water or there's no pasture, then you will not be doing any good to the community. And that's why the issue of education, you mentioned earlier when we started that many children are falling out of school.
Yeah.
To diversify this livelihood, it also means that we must ensure that, you know, children go to school. We must ensure that the young people get some other forms of, you know, earning, because that is also what will complement the traditional pastoralism, because we cannot then continue to say that we'll continue just with pastoralism. So I think there are all these issues that we really need to continue to push. It's not easy, even for partners who have been supporting us. Yes, it will also look like, yes, now it's always something that we are asking for, but we have to, because the situation demands that.
In that case, Dr. Now that you've pointed out some of these challenges, the Kenyan outside here, the viewer outside there who is watching right now, how exactly can he or she be part of the solution?
I think we have, like you said, a number of initiatives, and for me now the biggest appeal through, of course, HorizonTV and Jamia Mosque is that many of these counties also that are affected are also counties where you have a majority Muslim population. We are entering the holy month of Ramadan next week, and it gives me some sleepless nights, I will say, because I cannot imagine how they will be able to fast with no water and no food. So I think if there is one time that we really need to do something and to help these communities, I think it is even more now than ever, because I know many of them will still want to fast even in that condition. But the impact that that can have on their health will be disastrous, and so we must support them. For the National Steering Committee, we have a pay bill, 880-990, through which any Kenyan can donate. And I know there are many other, of course, initiatives that are happening, you know, even with the Red Cross. This is, I think the opportunities are there, and so we are not actually lacking the platforms through which to give. But more importantly, I think even as individuals, we live in communities, we live in estates. Do we know whether our neighbor has food? We can even start there to just ensure that we are taking care of those that are closest to us. Thank you.
Wow, wow, wow. Dr. Thank you so much for clearly articulating the issues, and of course the viewers outside there have heard you. One key thing that I've picked up is the fact that hundreds or rather thousands are dropping out of school. This to us may be appearing very simple, but again, what does it mean for the future generation? What does it mean 10, 20, 30 years from now? What kind of leaders are we going to have? Because these children who are actually dropping out of school right now, the next 20, 30 years, these are the same people you're going to see the pictures on the posters vying for different positions in this country. They're going to be our leaders. What kind of leaders are we allowing ourselves to bring up right now? If anything, I mean, this is our responsibility as Kenyans more than anybody else. Doctor has said here that some of the foreign donors are looking at, or rather classifying our country as the low middle income. And thus, this itself reduces the amount of support that we have been receiving or we are likely to receive in the next few years. And thus, we have just but ourselves. So it's your time to act now. As you're pointing at the government right now, pointing at the government, the county government, your local leader, these three fingers are pointing back at you. What can you do? Can you sacrifice a meal a day? Can you sacrifice any penny, little change that you have? Drop it on the pay bill? Whatever platform that you have or you have seen, you've come across that are collecting on behalf of the fellow Kenyans who are affected by the severe drought currently affecting our brethren. My name is Faisal Kassim. See you next week, same place, same time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.